Hey, what's going on, guys? Kalamazi here, and today I want to talk to you all about the trinket nerfs that came in a few days ago. The nerfs to, I guess, Beloros' GCD, Whispering Incarnate Icon, Clash Trinket, and some other changes to certain things along the way, trinket-wise. Because things have changed. If you look back to my previous video on trinkets, Whispering Incarnate Icon was BIS everywhere, regardless, by a long shot. That is not the case anymore. At the same time, other new trinkets have emerged as being pretty strong, dungeon-based ones tonight. Yesterday afternoon, whatever it is for y'all. I want to cover all that and just go from there, with there being just about a week and a half until S4 actually hits. Like always, Weekly Wars add-ons, profiles, links to Twitch and Discord down below if you want one for free. And yeah, let's get into it. Alright, so getting into the Sims here, what I have done, I have run 2-minute Destro, 3-minute Destro, Grand Warlock design without Grand Warlock design, Affliction single target, Demo single target, and then I've run a handful of AOE Sims for Demo, Destro, and AF, 10 targets, 40 seconds with the respective AOE profiles and talents, right? Now what we're looking at here is the 3-minute version of Destruction. This build's actually a little lower in single target compared to the 2-minute version, which is sitting right here at 403 versus 398. Off the bat here, once again, damage profiles vary. A fight that dies in like 340, you get two Infernals, regardless of playing 3-minute build or 2-minute build, which likely makes 3-minute build a little better. Putting that aside, and getting into trinkets here. Incarnate Icon, like we said, looking at last video, was very good. Here, not as much. Now, what I've done also, I have 2 Sims basically for each spec and build. I've run 1 Sim. I'll clarify when we get to each one here. Looking at Whispering Incarnate Icon and Chromatic Essence from Aberrus, a trinket from like Ray buffs and all that, with no party members, with basically solo DPS only on Incarnate Icon, and no party members with Ominous Chromatic Essence on. Just basically like self buffs, right? And the other Sim has full Incarnate Icon, full Chromatic Essence buffs to see where the value lies for both of them. Every build. In AOE, or sorry, in single target. In AOE, I just simmed full value from Incarnate Icon and Chromatic Essence. It is what it is. I mean, you'll see where it's at. It doesn't matter a whole lot, but I'm not going to run a million different Sims here, right? So, 3-minute Destro. First off, the build here is pretty wild. You are currently playing Internal Combustion with improved Immolate, longer duration, and Soulfire next patch. I have indeed simmed Sack in place of Soulfire. About a 2k DPS loss. I'm going to run more Sims at some point and see where it goes, but currently, IC with Soulfire and Immolate is actually like the best build for single target. Now, I played with it a little bit. It's actually not that bad, because this gives you a longer Immolate duration, obviously, which makes IC a bit easier to play with. And Soulfire being a button you hit once every 45 that applies Immolate and gives you a shard, doesn't feel that bad either. So there's that. But either way, putting it aside, we're here for trinkets and stuff. So 3-minute build once again here for Destro, single target, patchwork, 1 target, 5 minutes and all that. So the highest combination we have here, this does show Beloros and Naimu, but the highest overall combination, I've seen a mix of both, being Iridius Fragment and Beloros, or Naimu and Beloros, right? If you're a fan of Beloros, spoilers ahead, or Naimu and Beloros, great. This is going to be your patch. If you're not, well, unfortunately, I don't know what to tell you. So this is 3-minute build here, obviously. It's going to be holding, like, obviously, Iridius for your 3-minute Infernal here, but there's 100 DPS margin of error, and for the most part, being 3-minute Destro, as long as you can get, 2 Infernals or of course a fight regardless, I'm going to put personally Iridius Fragment and Beloros higher than Naimu and Beloros here. Naimu very good in single target, obviously, baseline intellect, damage effect, and mastery. We are playing Chaos Incarnate again this tier for max mastery benefit. You also have Beloros being very good here, right? Now, different combinations of trinkets here, like different slots basically, but you're looking at, Iridius Fragment, Beloros, Naimu, or Beloros. 3-minute build, I'm going to play Iridius Fragment. Going down there a bit though, however, let's say we're looking at this build being our highest build overall. You have Umberlisk Fractured Heart, which is from Azure Vault. This is, I think, from the last boss, but either way, it's very good. The effect can jump around if a target dies, whatever. It's good in single target, and it can jump a little bit in AoE. It's a dot that goes out. It's baseline intellect, a lot of value overall. It's in general on this trinket. It's pretty good. It is also an equip-based trinket. If you don't like double on use, whether it's Beloros Naimu or Iridius Naimu, this is an equip-based trinket from Azure Vault, also being paired with Iridius Fragment. Then you see right here, you have Fractured Heart with Beloros. You have Iridius Fragment here with Tome. It's double on use. I wouldn't play Tome either way, but there's that. And you have a mix of other Umberlisk Fractured Heart effects here with Iridius and Beloros. A bit further down, you got Beloros and Spoils. You have this, which is actually from hard mode, whatever the dungeon's called, Rise, whatever it is. Not Mythic Plus, not part of the current cycle, and Beloros. But TLDR, other ones here also like this thing, Feathers here somewhere too, also Vessel. But TLDR, it's going to be likely like Iridius Fragment, Beloros, and like pre-raid. Before you get Beloros, have a chance of getting it because it is, from the raid. You can farm Iridius infinitely. You can't farm Beloros or Naimu infinitely. So likely like Beloros and Umberlisk Fractured Heart being really solid for the 3-minute version of Destro in single target. This is also without any value added to Icon or Chromatic Essence. Looking at that sim that adds full party for both trinkets, it does gain some value. Like back here, the highest sim we have for Chromatic Essence and Incarnate Icon is like way down here. It's like a 5k DPS loss, which is not even that bad compared to other specs here. We'll look at it in a minute here. It's like 4.5k for Incarnate Icon and like 4.5 for Chromatic Essence. Filling the party out fully, it's still Beloros and Iridius Fragment being your best options here, or a combination of these two. However, you see Essence jumps a good bit. It's still behind by about 1300 DPS paired with Beloros or paired with Iridius Fragment, but it gains some value, having that full set of buffs on your Chromatic Essence. To a similar extent, Incarnate Icon also jumps here, being about 2.3k worse than, other effects here compared to 4k worse. But TLDR, this thing was best in slot, looking at just only like self-buffed effects, right? By like 3k DPS. When you had your whole raid wearing icons, whatever, it was ahead like 7k. It was really good, right? It is anywhere near as good as it used to be. So for Destro, honestly, Fractured Heart looks pretty decent. Also like eye level dependency, Great Vault versus dungeon stuff, but pre-raid like dungeon gearing for Destro 3-minute build, Iridius Fragment, Umberlisk Fractured Heart look pretty strong. Moving on to the 2-minute Destro here, right? The highest being version 403 versus 398. Roughly damage profiles vary a bit, obviously. Same build here. This build's playing it's playing SAC or something. I don't know why is it playing SAC? I don't know what it's playing here. What is it playing SAC over? I'm actually curious. What changed here? Why is it playing SAC? What are we missing here, chat? What changed here? Oh, it's playing... Oh, that's odd. Okay. We can change that regardless. I don't know why. I don't know why the baseline template has Pandemonium in it, but that's that either way. Sure, we can change that. Won't change or skew sims. It's like you should play SAC. There you go. Because you're pathing through improved emulate, so I guess it makes sense. Still playing Soulfire, still playing this, still playing Combustion. We can get SAC. There you go. Either way, moving on. Learn something new every day. 2-minute build. Beloros, Naimu. Not really surprising. It's a great combination now. Not too bad at this point here either. And there's not a whole lot of other contenders here, right? You're looking at Naimu and Desperate Invoker's Codex from Razagath, which is like damage-based trinket, double on you, sort of surprised to see Igneous Flowstone this high, honestly. It's baseline int with a crit strike effect and damage. I mean, it wasn't really buffed a whole lot, I don't think. It wasn't even buffed at all, actually, but it is equip-based versus, on use, all that. Then you have Pips here with Naimu, Spoils with Beloros, Beloros with Invoker's Codex, all this stuff here. You do indeed see Umberlisk Fractured Heart sitting here. Not as high for this build as it is the 3-minute build, but I mean, it's still there with like Naimu being paired with Beloros here. You also see this, Tome of Unstable Power, which jumps a decent bit with the 2-minute build versus 3. Not really sure why, but I've run a sim a handful of times. It looks to be about the same. You're looking at Equip Trinket in Tome, and you're looking at Naimu with an on-use effect again. Giving you that large mastery buff, baseline intellect, and the damage increase or I guess the damage effect that it brings as well. Just overall strong effect. You've also got things like Vessel of Searing Shadows here with Naimu. Once again, double on use here. 1 stat, 1 damage-based trinket. Pips and Naimu. So a handful of things here, but as far as like 2-minute effects are concerned for on use, I mean, it's basically Naimu. The Theris is not terrible, but not as good as Naimu. So if you can acquire it, pretty solid, pretty strong, and makes Destro, well, pretty decent overall, and also fix this here to have SAC in it versus not. All right, just to clarify, I ran the Sims again with 3-minute Destro playing SAC. I don't know why I didn't have SAC in the build. It did gain like 2k DPS, but still not as good as 2-minute build, obviously. The trinkets also did not change. You're still playing Beloros, Beloros, Iridius Fragment, Beloros, Naimu are here, and there's Fractured Heart, all that. Same for the, like, this is the non-buff build on Incarnate Icon and Chromatic Essence. It's the same thing here. Essence gains value, not as much as, you know, things before. You're still playing Beloros and Iridius Fragment for the most part. Moving on from there. So the next sim we have here is Demonology, about 18k lower than Destro. This is, from what I understand, the correct sim for Demonology in single target, just sort of how it is. Not as high as Destro. Destro's pretty high. But putting all that aside, so for Demonology, once again, hopefully you're a fan of Naimu and Beloros, because Demo is playing the 2-minute Naked Tyrant build still. Nothing really changes there, even with Clash Trinket being back. Portal was destroyed, gutted too much, and the Reign of Tyranny is still not very good. With all these synergy nerfs. So you have, you know, Beloros, Naimu. This is also the pre-buff, like no raid buff version or anything, right? Besides that, you have like Beloros, Naimu. You have Vessel of Searing Shadows and Beloros. You have Naimu, Unraveling Spindle, and Fractured Heart again right here. Keep in mind, Fractured Heart looking pretty good for Demonology. Like not BIS, obviously. You have 2 raid trinkets here in Beloros and Searing Shadows, and the best option being Beloros and Naimu. But once again, Umberlesque Fractured Heart, just like Destro, here, you know, looking pretty good. Like right about here, looking pretty good. And you can farm that trinket infinitely from a dungeon, being the Azure Vault, right? Besides that, you have like Naimu, Invoker's Codex, Beloros, Iridius Fragment, which is like okay for, I mean, it's a big buff for Demonology, obviously. It's a big buff for anything whenever you pop it, but it's 3-minute cooldown versus 2. Other effects here as well. Unstable Power being decent also here. Not as good as Fractured Heart in single target, but not terrible. A lot of like Beloros and X, basically. Like pips and stat-based trinkets, like they're in here somewhere, but not amazing. So you're looking at basically like Naimu and X. If you can't get a hold of Naimu early on, like for your, both your like, I guess like both your like damage, or both of your like dungeon-based trinkets, you're looking at like Umberlesque Fractured Heart, and then likely, I mean, down like the more you go down, you see things like where is it at here? Like this thing from hard mode. I guess technically you can play Spoils on Otheris, which is not bad, but like an 8k DPS loss. And you have like, you know, Rage Feather here. So Demo, looking at Beloros and Naimu, looking at the buff version on Icon and Essence, they are also like not incredibly competitive here. It's like 5k DPS loss roughly. Playing Icon with full raid buffs, still Fractured Hearts, Beloros, but realistically the biggest thing is Beloros and Naimu. For Demonology, playing 2-minute build in single target. Moving on from there, we have Affliction at 390, 739. Higher than Demo, not as high as Destro, right? Playing a single target build here, all that kind of stuff. Heading down, unsurprisingly, Beloros and Naimu. Now, for the 3rd time here, Umberlesque Fractured Heart being a very high equip-based trinket here. Once again, Azure Vault, same thing with this here, right? Demo, pretty high. Same with Destro, also pretty high. So this trinket overall going to be pretty sought after when it comes to pre-dungeon, like, you know, or pre-raid, like BIS dungeon gearing, whatever, right? Now, when it comes to Ath, this is the pre-buff. I believe so. This is the pre-buff. Let me see here. It isn't. I believe this is actually the pre-buff Chromatic Essence. Let me just take a look here. I believe this is pre-buff Chromatic Essence. It might be post-buff. I don't know, actually. Let me see here. It looks to be, I thought it was pre-buff. Actually, it might be post-buff. I might have mixed this up either way. It doesn't matter a whole lot. You're looking at, sure, this is the post-buff. Post-buff Chromatic Essence, either way. Not terrible. It's behind Fractured Heart by like 500-ish DPS, but still playing Naimu. You've got Incarnate Icon here. A bit behind Chromatic Essence by about 1400 DPS, but still playing Naimu. Then you have things like Beloros, Iridius, Naimu, Searing Shadows, Pips, trinkets that are okay, but not as good as the best combination being Beloros and Naimu. And to clarify, this is the post-buff, like full buffs to Incarnate Icon, full buffs to Chromatic Essence trinkets here. If you're looking at pre-buff, I'm sorry, I'll go back here. Like pre-buff meaning like no buffs, like raid buffs to Iridius or to Incarnate Icon and Chromatic Essence, they're not on here at all. It's still Beloros, Naimu, Umberlesque Naimu, Umberlesque Beloros, all that kind of stuff. So like for your pre-raid gearing, it's likely Umberlesque Fractured Heart. And then looking at something probably like, I would venture to guess if you're looking for on use, you can find things like Notheris Tome here. But keep in mind, Affliction with Haunt, Shadows Embrace modifiers, damage-based trinkets gain more value. So technically you're looking at like Feather being up here pretty high too. There's not a Feather, like a Feather Heart combination here, but not terrible. Being equip-based, you have Idol of Pure Decay, even Igneous Flowstone, Feathers here. And for like your one on use, one equip pre-raid BIS, looking at things, you know, there's like Notheris Trinket here and all that. But here's the actual Notheris Fractured Heart combo as well. So, I mean, TLDR, Fractured Heart looks really good for all these specs in single target. It's farmable from Azure Vault. At the same time, the other one in there, not too bad, being this blue tome, whatever it is, it's in here somewhere. It's in here somewhere. But there's 2 trinkets from this thing, from Azure Vault, that aren't too bad when it comes to single target for any spec across the board. As far as pre-raid BIS gearing goes, even in the raid, not a bad option, right? All right, now getting into AOE sims here. Try to keep it fast. I don't want the video to be too long and stuff. These are all 10 target, 40-second sims for Demo, Destro, and AF. Now I'm going to say off the bat here, Iridius Fragment sims the highest for all these sims, because pound for pound, you're getting like, you know, a trinket usage in. And Iridius Fragment being a 3-minute cooldown, massive stat increase, is going to be the best on use trinket pound for pound in a short sim. Mythic Plus is not half a minute long, it's 20 plus minutes, and you have multiple uses of trinkets in those dungeons. Iridius Fragment being 3 minutes does not pair good with Tyrant being 2 minutes, but it will sim high here because it's a short sim, condensed, just sample size, all the above, right? So, Iridius is simming highest here. Putting Iridius aside for Demonology, Ice Blood Death Snare from Sonarth actually simming pretty well. Now, I've run the sim a handful of times. It's pretty high every time. The only thing I can think of as to why this is so high, it wasn't bad in S1, honestly. Wasn't great, wasn't terrible. But Demo's stacking a lot of verse now. A lot more verse in S1 and S2. Verse directly increases trinket damage, right? So Ice Blood Death Snare likely benefiting a bit more from that compared to Destro and AF. Now, once again, putting aside Iridius Fragment here in Sims, I don't think it's like actually the best combination, the best trinket out there for it, because it doesn't pair with Tyrant or anything. You have Ice Blood Death Snare and Ashes of the Ember Soul being paired here, right? Now, also, essentially, they are double unused trinkets. So using one will incur a penalty on the other, that 20-second cooldown, right? Death Snare, damage-based trinket. Ashes, obviously a stat increase, all that, right? Take note here that Naimu is here, but it's like Naimu, Iridius Fragment. Naimu, Iridius Fragment, different pairings here, right? Ashes being very high. Naimu being a delayed stat, single target damage-based trinket, right? Now, Naimu brings that good single target effect in the damage it does, as well as mastery. It might not be overall strong as having a on-use in effect for mass AoE, but it's worth taking into account damage profiles. Single target with Naimu compared to Ashes versus, you know, Ashes and AoE compared to Naimu. Now, putting all that aside, looking at like dungeon-based trinkets, once again, Tome of Unsealable Power, Azure Vault, also being very high up here. An equip-based trinket being paired with Iridius Fragment, which you really wouldn't play here for Demonology, but still worth mentioning. Scrolling past all the Iridius Fragment pairings here, and putting this aside, obviously, your highest combination, this is also full buffs from Chromatic Essence and Incarnate Icon in the sim, is actually looking at Ashes and Tome of Unsealable Power. Once again, Death Snare being better, but Death Snare being from the raid and all that. Ashes and Tome of Unsealable Power. Now, if you scroll down more, here's other combinations of like Bolos, Ashes, all that. The highest Naimu sim here actually being Naimu and Ashes. Same thing here, just different pairing of trinkets and all that, right? But it's worth taking into account, once again, the value that Naimu brings in single target comparatively to AoE, right? That ST effect, pairing with Tyrant, all the above, very strong, right? So if you were going to run single target sims playing this AoE build, chances are pretty high you end up seeing Naimu higher than Ashes by a considerable margin, in trial boss settings versus mass AoE. Plus, take into consideration the fact that Naimu is basically BIS across the board everywhere else. Naimu and Ashes are your pretty big. Naimu and or Ashes look pretty solid for Demo overall, and plus paired with like Unstable Power, Ice Blood Death Snare. Honestly, pips and things aren't bad either. Chromatic Essence, whatever, what have you, but that looks to be the case for Demo AoE. And I also want to mention that AoE is pretty awkward to sim. I'm simming 10 targets for 40 seconds here. If it goes longer, it'll probably vary a bit. Plus, it's not like this a whole lot. It's hard to replicate AoE sims, looking at this, right? Destro, 10 targets, 40 seconds. Inferno build, all that. You have Iridius Fragment and Ash to the Ember Soul being paired here. Now, similar to the previous thing we talked about, Iridius Fragment is also playing 3-minute build. So Iridius is the trinket you want for Destro playing 3-minute build, right? That is what you want here. Not really the case for Demonology, but you have 2 unused trinkets here, right? Now, if I pop Iridius first with Infernal, I'm going to incur a penalty on ashes for 20 seconds. Whenever that penalty drops, I can still pop ashes and get a huge int buff for half of the remaining duration of this sim. Are you going to play that in plus? Not necessarily, likely not. But you're probably going to play something along the lines of like Iridius Fragment and Tome of Unstable Power. Death Snare, not being terrible either. Iridius Fragment, Death Snare, Iridius Fragment, Spear from Notheris Trinket Dungeon, whatever it's called. Now, there have been some people that have played 2 on-use stat trinkets before on fights like Tendril. At times in plus, because you can, Destro is very AoE based, right? You can pop your Infernal and a Radius Fragment on one pack and go to the next pack with 4 shards, you know, a proc of Ritual, drop the Infernal, pop Ashes, and build your own Infernal in a sense. You might not get Crashing Chaos, but you still have a big AoE effect with Ashes being paired from pack to pack, right? Like I said, chances are high you're going to end up playing Iridius Fragment and Tome, or Iridius Fragment and Death Snare, or Iridius Fragment and Pips, something along those lines, right? Chromatic Essence, for example. But in this sim here, Iridius Fragment is going to be your best option for the 3-minute build here in AoE. And also looking at the 3-minute build here in single target, well, it's also Iridius Fragment, right? And Beloros not being as high here, but, you know, Beloros is still in these sims somewhere, just, you know, down a bit more, right? So there is that. And when it comes to AF, similar thing here, you're looking at Ashes and Iridius Fragment. I'm not going to play double on use here. Once again, same thing, getting massive int buff from Iridius first for cooldowns, and then getting Ashes halfway through, being a 40-second sim. You're likely looking at pairing things, putting aside, once again, Iridius here. You're looking at probably pairing, like, an on-use trinket. Let me scroll down a bit here. Like Ashes with Chromatic Essence, or, to a similar case of Demonology, Naimu with Chromatic Essence because of the single target effect that it brings. Other options here, I guess things worth mentioning. You have things like Beloros being pretty high with, once again, Iridius Fragment, but you don't really want to play Iridius as AF. So likely a pairing of like Chromatic Essence or Unstable Power with like Ashes or Naimu. And the further you go down, you'll see like, you know, Beloros, Ashes, or Beloros Naimu. This is Trinket from first boss of, you know, Aberys, Ashes Naimu, Pips, Ashes Naimu. So for the most part, that one equip, one on use we've played for a while, whether it's, you know, Beloros being your equip-based trinket, being on use, and either Ashes or Naimu. So hopefully y'all have followed so far. A lot to take in here, obviously. I have links to the sims down below if you want them. That is that. But I mean, TLDR, man, Incarnate icon is not good anymore. It was destroyed. So thanks for watching, guys. Wraps it up. Hopefully you enjoyed the video to answer questions you might have been curious about for S4 Warlock trinket gearing and all that. Well, I guess heading into S4, we're less than a week and a half away at this point. Quick heads up, I am moving in a couple hours, and I likely won't be around for a couple days as far as like streams and videos are concerned, but we've got a lot going on. S4 in a week and a half, obviously. I'm expecting Alpha to be next week within a few days, probably. Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, likely at this point. It's going to be a busy next few months, but I'm excited for it. Hopefully you guys are too. So, like always, Week Wars add-ons, if you want them, links to Twitch and Discord down below. We're all for free for you guys. At the same time, give a huge shout out to my patrons, like always, for in the video. For all supporting Patreon, guys, just thank you so much. I really appreciate it. It allows me to keep doing what I'm doing for you guys, making content and all that, and I just really appreciate support many times. Thank you, thank you, thank you. If you're looking at supporting on Patreon, should be a link up here, as well as down below in the video description. Now, I gotta admit, as far as S4 is concerned, I'm excited because, like, gearing is always fun, right? But at the same time, I was thinking about it earlier, I really haven't had a chance to sit down and, like, run keys and dungeons, albeit it's S4 faded, but, like, I haven't done that since, like, pre-Nilotha, with Race to World first and things being a thing. In Shadowlands, which sort of did, but it was really busy at that time, too. I think Alpha was coming out, something like that. I'm going to be able to sit down, actually run dungeons when Faded hits in a week and a half, S4, right? I'm excited about it. You know, it might not last as long as S3 or S2 did hype-wise, but with that, Pandemonium, time running event, and Alpha Beta hitting, there's a lot going on, and I'm excited about it. So hopefully y'all are too. All that being said, thanks for watching, guys, and I'll catch you all again soon on stream. Peace.